Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Milestone Book Club on 22 panels. This actually winds up being the timeliest Milestone Book Club we've ever recorded because the paperback copy or the paperback version of this came out today. So today we're discussing Static Shadows of Dakota from season 2 of the new Milestone, written by Nikolas, Draper-Ivey, and Vita Ayala, with art by Nikolas, Draper-Ivey, and letters by And World Design. I am joined by the brothers Anderson, no relation. And how's it going, guys?
Cold.
Yeah.
Hey,
it's a heat wave. It's up 30 degrees from 18 hours ago.
And it's supposed to be like
20
in the
degrees
50s
where I am.
Yeah, Minnesota has I was kind of started complaining last week about the fact that like everywhere else in the country was getting a bunch of snow and we got no snow, and then Mother Nature decided to instead give us like 17 below wind chill. So that was fun. That was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I also was talking something about the winters we had when I was a kid, and I realized halfway when it was out of my mouth, that I might be jinxing something. So, it's all right.
Yeah, it happened. Yeah. No, it's been
global warming, am I right?
It's climate change is the thing. It's why it's but yeah, no, it's been a cold one. It's been a rough one. It's been a long few weeks. I'm trying to remember when we last actually like recorded. I'm kind of blanking.
It's been like a month and a half now.
Yeeg.
It's been a little bit over a month. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it was the holidays. It was a lot of winter stuff. It was everything else, but still, like, woof, man. Yeah,
I mean, it's the reason I know it's been almost 2 months is, and I was going to talk about this later, but we might as well talk about it now. Technically, we're supposed to record again on Monday. I'm assuming we're pushing that back.
Oh, yeah, probably. Yeah, we'll probably
have to push it back. Yeah,
we'll figure out specifically when off air.
Although I do want to propose an idea, though, since the
Sure.
Well, we can talk. You know what? I'll bring up during the episode, but I will say that Eben was the big villain of this art. Not villain. But he was
big new character addition.
Yeah, and Eben was first introduced in the animated series. So we had talked about the animated series. So maybe I don't think any of us have time to watch it in its entirety, but maybe we can do a little arc of the animated series for next month.
I was thinking about that because I never saw it. Like I was aware of it when it came on, but I was kind of not in a period where I was watching TV cartoons all that much. But I'm interested enough to try it. Yeah, I did see there was the crossover in Justice League or Justice League Unlimited. Justice League Unlimited. They did like a time travel thing, and they had like a future Static along with Batman Beyond and some other stuff. I don't remember. It was good, but it was its own thing. But yeah, I know that like Rocket shows up. Is it Rocket and Icon show up in Young Justice?
In Young Justice, that's what you're thinking of, yeah.
Okay, yeah. No, I only saw the first series of Young Justice. I hadn't seen it when it moved to whatever it moved to. But yeah, I know about that. I've never seen it though. I'm curious, but yeah.
There may be an issue with that because it's not on Max anymore.
Wait, what? Static?
Yeah.
Oh. All right. Well, we'll talk about it later. I mean,
yeah, I'm sure we have already watched it, and thus don't need to find other ways to watch it before the next episode, right? Right, guys? Right?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
we keep it legal here.
Of course. That's exactly how we roll. But yeah, Static Season 2, Shadows of Dakota, and I'm trying to remember. Okay, Season 1 was it also Season 1 was written by Vita Ayala. Who did the art on it? I'm trying to remember.
It was Nikolas Draper-Ivey.
Really?
It's just that he got co-writing credit for this season because he'd been doing, I mean, essentially in between, they decided that he'd done so much of the storytelling to begin with that they didn't want him being second bill. At least that's the way I understood it.
I'm actually, sorry, I'm looking it up right now. I thought it was Crisscross. Although, wait, no.
I think Crisscross did covers.
Syndicate. No, Crisscross did Blood Syndicate. I think that Nikolas Draper might have had like a little bit of assistance on an issue or two in the first arc, but it was definitely Nikolas Draper-Ivey because I remember leading up to it when he released all the character designs and stuff.
Yeah,
I think he's also listed because he was involved in the Milestone Returns Infinite Edition, which is included in the first trade.
Yeah, you know what it was? Chris Cross did layouts.
Right.
And finishes in color were Nikolas Draper-Ivey.
Okay.
Okay, that makes more sense. Because I got to say, I was I was really not a fan of the art in this one.
Oh, I liked it.
I it was really muddy at times. It was really kind of hard to just like follow the flow of certain things. I found. I don't know. It was.
I can definitely tell you what I think happened there. Like Nikolas Draper-Ivey has like his style's really like detailed, like when, you know what I mean, like, but I can see where, because I did look at like the early books. I'm like, yo, how are you going to knock this out like monthly? You know what I mean, like with
Yeah.
some of these details. And so like he does a thing where like some of like the establishing shots and like, you know, kind of middle distance shots, he'll kind of scale it down, sort of like, you know how like
Backgrounds.
in some, yeah, in some animes they'll go all out on a lot of scenes, and then certain ones they'll just have little
Oh,
stylistic tricks.
yeah.
So
The
Yeah,
fight
it
scenes are
definitely has
always
some
like,
manga influence to it that way.
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
Those fight scenes the fight scenes are always like top notch, and then like when it's just two characters
Right.
sitting in a room, they scale it back. Yeah. I mean, this is definitely manga, more anime and manga inspired than I remembered season one being. But it's just I don't know. Parts of it were I don't know. Some of it was muddy, and also there were occasional details that I felt kind of didn't get like they weren't visible in the way that the page was laid out in a way that I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm starting off with negativity and nitpicks. Like I'm really doing that. I'm not. I'm. I got to scale this back. Let's maybe talk about what this is. Sorry.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll do. You know what? I'm gonna try to do like a very quick overview. Oh, you know, I'm just gonna. Why don't we do like first impressions too? Like
Yeah.
maybe I was thinking about that because like a lot of times we get very plot heavy, and we can still do that. But just like yeah, just you know, like just overall impressions of this particular arc.
Yeah. Because
I
it
can go
is.
first if you
Oh
want.
yeah. Sorry.
Oh, well, no, just so I will say this because I know I'm always like really glowingly positive about Milestone stuff, and I do feel positive about this arc. I will say that one thing I had to adjust to, and I think we talked about it last time, is the fact that the this Virgil is like very cool, and the old Virgil was cool and awkward at the same time. And like and this
Yeah.
Virgil like is not awkward. Like, you know what I mean? Like because it's not like old Virgil was like Urkel or something, you know, but
Right.
he was cool. He was like a cool, like, you know, black teenager, but he also, you know, wasn't always self-assured. And like this this Virgil is just is cool as hell. And I actually don't think that's a negative. I will say I was reading it and I was like, okay, I at first I was like, oh, I do miss a little bit of the,
Nerd
you
Virgil.
know, just not always not this Virgil is just very self-assured. And
Yes.
I actually have a lot of positive things to say about that, because one positive thing I think which it attributes to his self-assurance is like Vita, Ayala, and Nikolas Draper-Ivey, like I think the family dynamic is really strong. And the family dynamic was strong in the old book, but like for instance, Virgil and Sharon, his sister, like they were at each other's throats. And there was
Yeah.
love there, you know what I mean? Like and but it was like they were at each other's throats, and like his parents were always working, you know, and that's happening here.
Yeah.
But what I will say, and I'll be wait, I'll pass the mic in just a second. What I will say is that I do I got used to how self-assured he is. The jokes, he has some quips, but he's also, you know, less also like his jokes were more on point. And I feel like an old Virgil would be like 50-50. His jokes would be funny and then they'd be like hilariously bad too. You know, so there's that. Like this is kind of a this isn't your father's Virgil, but I do like him. And I think that one thing that they explored in this arc, because we're just kind of doing primary first thoughts. So for me, like what I liked in this arc is they really, I think, explored what it is to be a hero. And with Eben, who I mistakenly started to refer to as a villain, but Eben's not really a villain. They basically had different means, towards a similar end, and they had to work some stuff out. So I did like all
Yeah.
the existential stuff because, like, while there was real world fighting and battling, at times throughout these issues, a lot of the consequential battles were more like, moral or, like just
Internal.
people's, yeah, like more philosophical battles. Yeah, like
Yeah.
so I mean, those are my big thoughts, but I did enjoy this arc.
Yeah, I really should not have come out swinging so hard on this because it's not as though I hated it. It is a different it is a different Virgil. Like I like this Virgil. He's fine. He's fun. He is like making him the mentor figure in this season. So season 1 is a lot of him kind of getting a grip on his not even really his powers kind of came pretty quick, relatively speaking.
Yeah,
And it's more like kind of deciding to stand up and fight. And then by this time, he's kind of established himself already as a hero. He's established himself as a community figure. And specifically, the thing that's changed in this version of the Milestone universe that I think is for the positive, although I'd love to see it explored more deeply in other ways, is that Bang Babies are sort of like an out class of people that, they have like support groups, they have meetups
mm,
and like there's a recognition for them that didn't exist in the original series where it was very much like it was your classic X-Men being hunted down by Sentinels on the streets kind of thing where it's they're constantly being grabbed by system and they don't really have any sort of visibility beyond being just freak people who get kidnapped or whatever. And in here there's a
right.
there's a different sense of it's a thing that people are recognizing as like, oh, there's a condition, people have it. I do wish there was a little more like showing of that, and as much as the meat of the thing, like you were saying, I mean, a lot of the heart of it is Static and Eben, their differing philosophies and how they're approaching the situation. I do wish there had been space then for having the having like have some other Bang Baby characters show up towards the end and kind of help out the situation, because it ends up just being essentially Virgil, Eben, and then the villain, the real villain more or less,
Mm.
kind of fighting it out and having a talk essentially. And I really, it could have been a cool opportunity to instead have the Bang Babies show up. Well, I guess they kind of did it at the end of season 1 where they had
Yeah,
like
they
as they're
did.
breaking out of the facility. Yeah, I guess more of that
Yeah,
maybe, or more of a sense that like Static isn't the only person doing this would be nice. I
right.
don't
I
know.
think, well,
I'm
this is, well, you know what I would say to that? And wait, I'm actually, I feel like I'm in a time warp because I can't remember if the last time I talked about this was on this show or not. But I think I was just I did we talk last time just about my little uh hope that DC will do right by Milestone, this time around.
mm,
And I guess I say that to say that, like, when the original Milestone universe was going, like, you had quite a few books uh to kind of like tackle these different aspects of Dakota and the universe, like from different angles. And I know that we kind of get some big gaps between series, and so I'm just hoping that, like, if DC, if you're listening, because I know you listen to 22 panels,
hmm
everybody at DC, what up, Jim Lee?
I mean,
Um,
we
you
did
know,
get followed by Marie Javens on
exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Instagram, so it's possible.
that's not
No,
nothing.
no.
That's great. Yeah.
Right.
Yes, shout out to you too, Marie. Yes, but no, but like DC, since I know you are listening to the excellent podcast 22 panels with our brother Tad, I would implore you to really continue to put your muscle and your dollars behind the Milestone universe, because like you're saying, Ted, in all seriousness, like, I do want to see some of these things explored. I think that, like, if this actually made me want to go back and reread the first arc, because I did want to kind of see how
Yeah.
they tackled some of that. I do know that, like, a lot happened in that arc, and this one kind of moves quickly too. So I think there are times where they don't necessarily rest on things. Like, one thing I will say that I did miss from the old series is, while you kind of had, like, some of the train rides with Virgil and his friends, his crew, like, they I would say he was on his own a lot more, and back in the day, you
Mm.
used to see him with his friends, which was cool because you kind of like got to know each of them. they'd focus on different friends more in different arcs, but like so that I'm curious to know this version of Richie, or this version of Daisy a little
Yeah.
bit better. And it's kind of cool because Daisy has powers this time.
I was about to say, I was racking my brain. I'm like, wait, did Daisy get powers? No, she's got like the
No, not that I
disintegration
know
powers
of.
and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
like Frida's here, but like we don't spend that much time with her.
yeah, and that is unfortunately that's just kind of the consequence of doing the the miniseries sized things where it's only six or
Right.
seven issues to do all this, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
yeah, I do. I mean, really, I guess in general, I'd like to see more of like a community sense, because the other thing that I liked about the idea that there are people out there who are bang babies who don't want to do any of the hero stuff. Like we saw that one girl who could like twist a wrench in her hands, which was fun. Although I did wonder, like, why are you just carrying a wrench in your purse, like just to do that? But like I like that idea that
I
we
mean,
have this community.
it's a shortcut,
It's
That
true,
way you
yeah.
don't have
It's
to
like
really describe
look
it.
for
You're just
anything
like,
else.
boom, wrench.
Yeah, what can I bend around
Then
here?
you
Yeah.
twist it back when you're
Oh,
leaving, and then for the next person, you twist it again.
no, it actually makes a lot of sense. But I do always love series that explore the idea that not everyone with powers has to be a hero with it. I mean, famously I mean, there's a bunch of examples. Like the one I always go to is there was an Astro City arc about like the people who just do like special effects on movies or stuff like that. And
Mhm.
I always love to see those. And for a series that is like this static leans really hard into the idea of Dakota and like a community, and like this stuff about Virgil's dad setting up like the first community center for bang babies and like community support. I think that's great. I would love for
Yeah, I'm
that
glad
to
you
have
mentioned
been.
that because there actually is some good community stuff in this arc.
Yes, and I would love to see
Anyway,
that be more the focus as opposed to like the unethical science, like mad doctor stuff, which I get it, but like you got to have the villain, but it just was so it didn't do anything for me, and also like it wasn't it didn't strike me as super distinct from like the first series. Like we still have same faceless goons in soldier uniforms rounding up bang babies, and it's kind of like we already did that. So I don't know. I'm feeling punchy tonight. I don't know what it is, but I, I I'm feeling punchy every night, baby. I
I,
don't know.
yeah, I mean,
And I'm going to punch back because I want to go back to the art a little bit
Sure.
because I was just flipping through and I found one of my favorite sequences. Because really, I feel like the art
Ooh, yeah.
is very manga
and I can't stress this
inspired.
enough. Monthly, like
Yes. And
imagine
also
doing this on a monthly basis. All right, go
and
ahead.
also
Sorry.
like as a no, I was just
No,
also going to say like as a manga inspired thing, like the one thing that manga artists have that American comics artists don't is like six people sitting in a room to do all your backgrounds for you. Not I mean that makes it sound like they're but like the figures that are in the the figures in the book look great, like the faces and the
Yeah.
body language and all those expressions and everything. Those are pretty good. It's just that like the background
And he's
occasionally
doing color
suffer.
too.
And he's doing color, and the
Sorry.
colors
As an
actually.
artist, I have to I have to paint a whole picture of what Nikolas Draper-Ivey is
Well,
doing
but
every
I,
issue.
I want to
Yes.
quickly give a couple of non-artists but storytelling beats here because it's really impressive to me. I mean, first of all, very manga inspired, but I also in the coloring I see a lot of like spray paint art, tagging,
Yeah,
shadowing,
I could see some of that.
etc.
I
Um,
it is really vibrant coloring. That was one thing I really wanted to give props on was that the coloring is great. There's a lot of really vibrant
also,
stuff.
and I don't even know that I think manga always does this as well as Nikolas has done here. I'm looking specifically at the scene where Virgil's family has come to the police department because of the thing that happened, and the police are being police because blood syndicate.
Mm-hmm.
And how authoritative the cop gets to look when he's speaking, and how it zooms out, and they're less fleshed out characters when they initially speak. But then as they come way more into focus, as they turn the script finishing with the towering over the now much less sure of himself cop.
Yeah.
So some of it is possibly speed related or whatnot, but also those things are used to very specific purpose in terms of the feel and flow of the storytelling. And it also, to me, is where, and I didn't notice until I was like flipping through pages quickly, having the more traditional American, but also really impressive work of and world design on the word balloons, the sound effects, etc., separates it from its manga influenced action and panel layouts, and makes it a very American superhero comic, but in a seamless rather than jarring way. I love the art on this. I was able to just flip through pages and do very little reading and start remembering all of the story that I'd all but forgotten because it had been 2.5 weeks since I read it.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
but it's also not art that it's its own style.
Yes.
Like if you want to not have to, I mean, I think sometimes when we're reading comics, it's easier to not have to engage heavily with the art, to have that Kirby-esque, that Romita-esque, the language that we're very familiar with. And so we're engaging with the art, but we're engaging with the art only to pick up on action and mood, not to pick up on deep nuances of character and storytelling.
Unlike the rhythm of scenes.
Man. Oh, you are. You are.
Yeah.
You are.
But the great art
or
is the
seething
stuff
on
that makes us do otherwise, Marcus. I'm speaking as a reader. It's sometimes easier, does not make
we give
better.
you a nice background for the text. I'm just messing with you, man. I said we just give you a nice background for the text.
It's all about the words.
I'm joking.
Sometimes as a reader, that makes it easier. I didn't say that makes it better. I said
no,
it makes
it's
it
jokes,
easier.
man. It's jokes. I promise you, I'm joking.
There's a sequence that I was thinking of actually where it was Virgil talking to his mom in like issue, maybe like 4 or 5 or 6, I forget when exactly. And there's kind of a long conversation where she says a lot of things about how she's proud of him, and even if he can't save everybody and so forth. And then there's just one wordless page following with just 2 big beat panels of Virgil crying and his mom kind of comforting him. That's yes, yeah. That's a fantastic use of it, and that was a really good sequence. So like, it is, There's,
with all due respect, I really do like the art in this. I think that I do understand there legitimately are some action scenes where even I was like, oh, okay, that's a little bit indistinct, or even like where so for instance, I could tell you as an artist, right, like when you are adopting like maybe say a more noir type approach, you can use shadow heavily but still like keep things really distinct, like, you know what I mean? And there's a few places where, like, I know there's one panel in particular where maybe Virgil's kind of within Eben and everything's all shadow world and everything, and there's a few things that are like maybe like cheats because I'm like, wow, that barely looks like Virgil, but I can kind of see his hair. So there are things where, but I read that, and maybe it's because it's kind of inside baseball as an artist. I'm just sitting here trying to even imagine knocking this out, like, on a DC comic schedule with the colors, and these aren't like rudimentary, colors. So I do think that, and I will say this from, speaking up for the artists, is there are times when if you're doing, say, like even for me, right? If I'm just doing the pencils and inks on something, I have to really, there's certain things where I know if I'm doing the colors, I'm like, okay, boom, I'm gonna, do my thing and make my inks like very readable, right? But it's kind of like there's times where I can make an on-the-go decision and be like, I'm gonna use a little less line to define shape here because I know what I'm gonna do with colors. Whereas if I'm leaving it to a different colorist, then I'm like, okay, I gotta like really make sure the colorist knows, what I'm doing with form here. So I say all
Yeah.
that to say, I can see where the approach, because when I read comics, it's hard for me to just kind of read them and be like, that's cool art. Like I
You
do,
you got to be
but
picking
I'm
it apart.
also,
It's
yeah, I'm also, well, it's not even picking it. You know what it is? It's
yeah.
like I'm noticing, and I'm like, okay, they're doing this, they're taking this approach as far as, maybe how much shadow they're doing with ink versus how much shadow they're doing with color. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like,
It's that craftsman eye
I,
thing. You're seeing it as a creator. Yeah.
yeah, so with this book, like I do agree with Tad, because it's like I think those emotional beats, and that was a great example that you both were talking about with Virgil's mom, that moment. And to be honest, that's the stuff I love about this, because I think I mentioned it up top, even though there's a little bit less of the less sure Virgil, right? Like the stuff that they're doing with like family dynamics, and even like, just to be honest, the commentary about like race and identity is very natural in a way where, like, other books might do, like, you guys might not get the reference, but in a there was a Wayans brother movie that was basically a spoof of a lot of 90s, black movies, specifically like ones with messages, and there was a joke from that movie where something would happen, and then like somebody would jump out and say message, like, just to underline that there's a message there. And sometimes when you have like stories, right, where you are grappling, topics like race, racism, like systematic, racism, all of that, like, there's times where it could be like heavy-handed, but things like the conversation with Virgil's mom, um, where, like, just for the listeners, to sum up that conversation, like, Virgil's been through a lot, and we haven't really gotten to the plot, but this is a good opportunity to bring in an important part of the plot of this arc. And what that is like, as I think you mentioned before, Ted, we see Virgil in this kind of taking like a mentor role, and you see some responsibility, which is pretty cool, because I feel like that's not necessarily something we saw in the him interacting with anyone younger in the old
Yes, that was the
series.
thing that. Yeah,
And
that wasn't in the original series. That was good.
yeah.
Sorry.
And so, like, there's this kid that he takes under his wing, and the kid's going through a lot. You find out that he also is a bang baby, and he's like 12, like barely 12. So he doesn't know what to do with it. His parents, like, they're very loving parents, but they're like working all the time. But the best, so the kid is like naturally, understandably feeling like, oh man, I don't get to see my parents. I don't think they care, because you also find out that he's like really gifted at science, and kind of advanced, and he's in this program for science, which sadly is part of his undoing. But Virgil's kind of there. Virgil's like playing like a big brother role to him, even though they're not like siblings. And this, as you find out that these goons are basically taking bang baby kids and turning them over to be experimented on, and in most cases die. Like, sadly, Quincy, this young man, is taken. So Virgil, like, it's weighing heavy on him. He's grappling with it, and he also feels guilt because, you know, he helps Quincy understand his parents do love him, and that they're not showing up at like his science fairs because they don't love him, but it's because, they are, it's like literally they have to work so hard to make ends meet. And like that's really real. And like, without even saying black or anything, to me that's just like really relatable to like a lot of people that I know, right? Where it's like you have a very loving family, loving black family, and it's like mom and dad are like hustling to make ends meet like all the times, and you see where that that can be tough. And his parents, I really loved what they did with his parents when you do meet them, and you do see that like love coming through. also just like this conversation with Virgil's mom that we were talking about. It's after he's coming back from, having seen Quincy's body, I believe, like, and learned that he died. And like she just has this really real conversation with him about, because initially he does that thing that teenagers can often do where she's like trying to comfort him and be there for him, and he basically says like, how could you know what it's like or what I'm going through? And she's just a good parent. She's like empathetic. She talks to him and she does let him know that you're right. I don't know exactly what you're going through now, but then she also tells him about how, um, working in a hospital, she sees like people come through all the time and she can't save them all. And, she speaks specifically about how she sees every time like a young black man, young black boy, like, ends up in there, she sees him, right? And she like, and all of her feelings about that come through. So like, just word wise, like this is all like very like real and natural to me and like relatable, and also like world building, but also like what they're doing with the art as it's happening, is really effective too. So
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I don't know. I just feel like there's a lot of layers to the storytelling, and yeah. Anyway, you go ahead.
No, I mean you're right. I was way too hard on the art to come in with. It's doing a different thing, and it's also like there was one like little thing that really like bugged me, which is so little, but it was like when Virgil's first meeting Quincy and Quincy setting up a science experiment, he uses his powers to like fix it somehow, but the shot is just like it's sort of like one very far off small panel, and it's hard to see what's happening. And it was just sort of like, wait, what actually happened there? So that just sort of bugged me in a way that was not actually like helpful, but it was just something that kind of stuck in my mind where I'm like, oh man, I wish I had a better read on what was going on here. Not a thing, but it it is no, I mean there is an effectiveness to the storytelling, and there's a real sense that there is, yeah, this community aspect and this idea of Virgil's mom seeing him every time a black kid comes into the emergency room, and it's yeah, this is pointing towards a different understanding of static, where rather than being the smart funny kid in the um the quippy smart kid in the multiracial ethnic sitcom, the diverse sitcom on maybe UPN or whatever. Like it's a different understanding of what his role is and how he's what makes him most interesting as a character, and what his yeah, I'm trying to think how to put it. I do like the new version of Virgil. Like that's a thing that I like a lot. I wish that there was more of a sense of Dakota being different. Like I just wish there was so much more of like, I want to see the community center more, I want to see more like Bang Babies hanging out. I want to see like the city. I want to see people in the city. I don't know.
I mean, I think that's one of the differences between the fact that they're doing a mini series at a time right
Yeah.
now, rather than having multiple ongoing titles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which in some ways is probably the better way to do it in the current comic market, to actually have it have an impact and get read and continue. But it also means that to open up that whole wide city universe is going to take a lot more time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That is
I
the
mean, like, yeah, I was just gonna say to that point, like, I guess this is where, shout out to my DC editors who are listening. But I, I personally, sometimes I do feel like they do this season approach with other books, but not all of them. And like a lot of the like, Batman, they find a way to get like two Batman books, just of the Batman series, let alone Detective, like, a month. So I just feel like it's also a matter of investment, and in hindsight, which it's funny that we figured out that the Milestone documentary is not still up on Max, but you know, that documentary, while like it maybe slightly pulled punches, it did kind of get to the fact that like DC um did not support, although I might be getting it mixed up with another good Milestone documentary that was on YouTube, where I feel like they really got into some of the ways that, like, ironically, all of the things that Dwayne McDuffie and others were tackling in, say, like hardware, when it comes to like a glass ceiling or just, you know, say the Edwin Alvas of this world not investing in Black Genius. There's a way that DC did not invest in Milestone. You had certain, dudes just getting kind of thin-skinned that like these troublemakers, quote unquote, you know what I mean, like didn't want to play ball and say how high when they said jump. So, it's just like stuff like that. And so I guess, without bashing our distinguished competition, that's listening to this podcast, I will say that I would like to see more support, and I would like to see the opposite of the reality that we're talking about, in the sense that they're doing the seasons as opposed to a monthly book, because a monthly book would give space to do what you're talking about, you know what I mean? And like,
yeah,
and even some of my things that I would have liked to have seen, like more time with the Friends. I don't necessarily know where that would have necessarily fit in with everything that they had to get done in these 7 issues.
I would love to see it too. And obviously I'm not inside of internal DC strategy meetings. I think if I was to back of the napkin it based on what I know of comic shops and what I know of the other overall comics market right now, the problem is the stories that work best with Milestone and the stories that I think we would like to see told the most. The market is the graphic novel market, except that that's not the superhero market. I mean, right now, yeah, Batman can they can have as many Batman titles. Stores never have trouble selling Batman. Stores never have trouble selling Spider-Man. But like they dramatically underprinted Absolute Wonder Woman #1, and they've had to send it back to print 4 times because even though she's one of the Trinity, they didn't go, oh, well, Kelly Thompson and Hayden Sherman, they're going to knock it out of the park, aren't they?
Yeah.
Right. Well, let me ask you this. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
So I'm not saying that it's impossible. I'm saying that part of it is both committing themselves to, but then figuring out how to properly market. I mean, because, my favorite Batman run ever is Tom King's run, and it wound up lagging in sales because too many Batman people don't like, oh my God, there are feelings. And if you wrote a Milestone book without feelings, it wouldn't be a Milestone book. Which means that
go ahead.
The people that are most likely to love it aren't necessarily going to comic shops. And the people that are getting their comics at non-comic shops aren't necessarily reading superhero stuff. I mean, this is one of the reasons Valiant reboots every 2 or 3 years right now, is they can't get a foothold.
Well, all right, and I and these are all really good points, right? And I know I've been like, speaking specifically about DC and Milestone, but you everything you're saying, Tab, makes me think about the fact that I guess what I'm really getting at, and what I'd like to see goes beyond just DC and just Milestone. And I really feel like, we've talked before.
We should make a lot more art for art's sake and have a more longitudinal vision of it making profits. I would love to see that.
Well, because like a friend of mine, and I don't know that he coined this, because I feel like I've heard other people say it, but a friend of mine who was a DJ, used to say like, real DJs break records. Like, in the sense of not just being like, oh, everybody knows these 5 songs, so of course I'm gonna spin that. But like, it's like, but he was kind of referring to the idea of just a DJ having an ear, but not just for what people already are digging, but just kind of like, what they don't even know that they're gonna love, like once it gets spun, And I'd like to see. I know I'm talking about is like more like punk rock or whatever, but I'd like to see more of that in comics because, to be quite honest, this cautious, calculated approach that they're taking, while I do understand how much money goes into printing these books and all of this production and everything,
really,
the comics
considering
industry
who's doing it, it's a drop.
Right. But that's what I'm saying. The comics industry like still struggles, right? And it's still not necessarily thriving. I mean, some people are thriving, is you know what I mean? But like, so my point is, it's not like this approach is like specifically so. And to your point, like you're absolutely right with the example of with say like when Tom King's writing Batman and certain fanboys get in their feelings, loud fanboys getting their feelings about there being too many feelings, right? But I feel like if as a publisher, if something is really good, like Tom King's writing, right, and you support it, sure, some of these loud crybabies, you know what I mean? You may shed some of them, but like, I don't know, you quite possibly are going to open yourself up to other peoples that are like, oh, I thought Batman books were just A, B, and C, but like, you know what I mean?
Agree.
Like, there's all these dimensions to it.
I totally
want to
agree.
see more courage.
From an industry standpoint, it's one of the reasons that I like the fact that more traditional publishing houses are getting involved, because they do look on a more longitudinal standpoint. They don't think of a book as a failure if they didn't sell enough copies in the first year, because lots of books become big 10, 20, 30 years after they were published. So it's more about having the reprint capability. I mean, honestly, I think that's you're a beneficiary of that. It's that market that makes a Black Panther Party and a Big Jim and the White Boys. That market hasn't figured out how to do superheroes yet.
Yeah, I mean, the book publishing industry is definitely more open to the long tail, where you have a book that isn't going to sell a bazillion copies up front. It's going to sell well, maybe not even a bazillion. It's going to sell enough copies over time. And that's, I mean, something I was just realizing. So in my capacity as a librarian, I just got a copy of Static Season 1 at my library where I work. And I've been pushing it on kids love it. I've got kids coming in to ask for it. What's interesting to me though is thinking about other books that are sort of interestingly comparable, and I keep thinking of like Jason Reynolds is a Black author who has done he's done a bunch of like works of his own. He's also written a bunch of like Miles Morales prose books, which are great. I love recommending those to kids because kids obviously like it's kids asking for those. And he did one book. What was the name of it? 10 blocks home. No, Look Both Ways. A Tale in 10 Blocks, and it's like a collection of short stories about kids going home after the school bell and like what their walks home are like. And then I'm also thinking of there was another book that I got that was a short story compendium called I think Blackout, which is just like about people in a neighborhood, when the power goes out. But what I'm thinking of is what I realized when I was talking about like I want to see a book like about Dakota. I want to see a collection of short comic stories, like stories in comics, not necessarily funny.
So like a Astro City version of Dakota would be great.
Yeah, I mean and the thing is as I'm saying this, I'm realizing like I just want a completely different format for graphic novels for my library.
And actually, it did occur to me, and this might be one worth reading at some point too. I enjoyed it a lot. Have you picked up Static Up All Night for your library?
No, it's on the next order list that I'm going to be submitting. Okay. But yes, I know the one you're talking about.
That was Lamar Giles and Paris Aline in the DC YA graphic novel.
Yes.
So it's separated from continuity.
That they're doing those. I do like that they're doing those.
So they have done so far just the one Milestone one.
Right. But they have a whole bunch of other ones.
But they are trying it in other places.
Yes. That's the thing that I love, because I have other ones that are
those they definitely
YA
have a longer
novels.
lead on. So sometimes like you wind up seeing the sequel come 2 or 3 years late, 3 years later, followed by boom, 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 5 more books, because that book that they wrote 5 years ago finally, I mean, Primer's a perfect example of that.
Oh yeah, Primer, which is now also getting like a mainstream DC book or something. I forget, but yeah,
right.
Well, sorry. On a positive note, no, I'll be real quick. I said a lot, but like on a positive note, I will say that that's a good example of what I was getting at. Like, you know what I mean? Because I don't want to be all negative. I know DC is listening, and shout out to you all. But in all seriousness, like, yeah, that is a good example of kind of like thinking differently. You know what I mean? Like about how you present things. And look, if there's anything we know, right? Even if we just take it to like on the screen and cinema, if we polled everybody in general, like about like what their favorite, say, MCU film or whatever is, not that there's not issues with MCU, but like if you usually for a lot of people, it will end up being one of the ones that takes these characters that we know really well and just explores some type of genre that's not specifically superheroes. Like for me,
yeah.
I don't know that my favorite. One of my favorites is definitely like Winter Soldier. I'm Black Panther as well. Like, to me, those are both movies that are doing a lot of things and are kind of, while they do have the punching and the running and jumping and all that stuff, they're doing like, a lot of different things. And I think like, if at this point, if you're going to do superheroes, you have to do some different stuff. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Which is why I kind of like the existential philosophical stuff in this arc, because I feel like if it's just like, this one has this power set and how would this power set match up? And like, I mean, it's cool, but like, I remember being in middle school and like trying to make up characters, and you're just like, that's been done. No, there's already a guy that does that. You know what I mean? It's like, it's just it's all been done. So I feel like you have to find creative ways to explore what you can do with these characters.
Absolutely. And I hope I don't sound like too much of a DC apologist, because that's not what I'm trying to do, as much as when you made the DJ analogy in particular. In a lot of ways, that's what I view this podcast as, is I'm not just trying
and also,
to
be clear, my critiques also go to Marvel too. Like these are kind of like big two critiques.
Go
it's
all
not
over
just
the industry.
DC.
You are not spared our wrath. No.
Right.
Right.
My critiques go all over the industry, but I also spend a lot of time thinking like specifically about how might it be done better. What would that look like? What is the actual risk? How would you try to roll it out? What, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I do. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I mean, I was just going to say that, like, there's so many unexplored ways to make comics and so many ways to make superheroes in different ways or different formats. I'm so glad you brought up Winter Soldier, because that is also like one of my favorite DC or MCU movies. It's like that and Thor Ragnarok, because Thor Ragnarok does some really fun stuff.
Thor Ragnarok is really good too.
Yeah. And obviously, like, Black Panther is high on that because, again, it's doing interesting stuff. That's a whole other podcast. But like, finding new ways to do superheroes for an audience that has grown up with some of it, but also like just wants a different spin on what superheroes are and can be. That's so crucial, and that's so interesting, and that's so important. And the DCU YA books that you mentioned as well, those also, I have a bunch of those in my library. And again, it is a thing where it's characters who might not otherwise get a lot of love, or who are interesting spins on characters. I mean, I don't have I am not, or what's the is it
I'm not Starfire?
I'm not. I don't have that. It's on my order list. I so want it because it's great.
That was the first book we did. I was telling you off air about the Brits Cabinet book club that I do. That was the first book that we did.
Yes, that one's great. And also, like,
one of the first books that we did.
Oh yeah, we have the Zatanna one. We have the ones by Jadzia Axelrod, the Galaxy, the Pretty Star, and then there's the Dreamer book that I think is just coming out.
Cami Garcia's done a bunch.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But all those are really interesting explorations of putting these characters in different situations and having different spins on them. And Static Up All Night is a similar thing, where it's got superhero elements. I mean, for sure, I read it, I like it, but it is a different vibe. It's a very different specific thing. It's telling a different type of story, and it's just, I want to see like that's one of the things that I think was also a little bit disappointing about Shadows of Dakota, to bring it back to the actual book we're talking about, was that it did
book club. We talk about what we want to.
we go in all sorts of places. It did, in the end, it went back to being a story about like one bad person doing bad things, or like several bad people doing bad things. We had, what's his face, who was the agent, who's like, was it his wife got hurt in the thing with Holocaust, or I don't know. There was like, oh, he's bad because he gets killed by Eben because he led the task force to get all the bang babies. And then we have the doctor who, she's got her own reasons because she's like messed up by her father, and a lot of it boiled down to like individual bad actors being bad, and then we essentially get them to change their minds, which is at least different from season one. But season one, what I liked is it's showing, hey, there's a whole system in play here. There's all sorts of people, there's all sorts of agencies and so forth fighting back, trying to stop bang babies, and implicitly also then maintain the social hierarchy, and making it more about like individual actors in this
Well,
book felt a little bit like a step back for me. But that's, I don't know, that's also just me and my own preferences for.
I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying, but I think the way I read it, right, is I think that's an accurate description of like the central, maybe like action conflict. You know what I mean? But like I think that the internal stuff with Virgil, um, like the neighborhood stuff. I mean, albeit like, like you had mentioned that you don't necessarily see like a lot of, people around the city, but like you do get to, kind of know Quincy's parents. There's kind of a bittersweet thing because like you get to know them in their absence initially. You get to know them having this really sweet like, dinner with him afterwards. And then you sadly see them like pretty quickly having to mourn him. You know what I mean? And like that looms over everything. There's also the because we haven't talked too much about Eben. I really like what they did with Eben, and Eben is actually an interesting character in the anime series too. I thought that like if you were going to take Eben and not, I forget what his brother's name. His brother's kind of got like
Adam,
Plastic Man type powers.
I looked him up. So he's Rubber Band Man, who shows up later on in the original series. Yeah, he's in the TV series too.
Yeah, so like, but like, I just feel like if you're gonna bring those characters in, this was a really interesting way to explore that.
Yeah.
And also like just getting into Edmund and his motivations. I really like because it's interesting because initially like him and Static clash, not because it's like I'm the good guy, you're the bad guy, boom, boom, boom. Like, they clash because like they both are looking for the same thing. They're looking for the people who are taking the kids and doing all this stuff. But like I said, their methods are totally different. And Virgil's like taking measure, and then he jumps in because he's like, yo, you can't just like straight up kill and torture people. And so they clash. And it's interesting because Virgil doesn't win per se, at least in any classical comic way. What he actually does is heroic in a whole different way, right? Because he kind of is essentially standing true to his values and his moral, and he's trying to find a way to like reach Eben. And he kind of does it like in his mind essentially, but then it comes out to the outside world, the physical world. And so it's not even like, oh, I punched Eben until he decided to team up with me, and then they have like this reluctant alliance. So, and it's interesting because they do an interesting framing thing. There's even a sequence where you're kind of going back and forth between like where Virgil is and where Eben is, and their narration boxes are like slowly merging almost. Like they do this thing where they, and Tad, you were mentioning the excellent lettering in here, and like that's a perfect example because they stack their narration boxes, so it's really going back and forth. And then they eventually merge, right? And like, so I think to me that's the cool stuff in this arc that wasn't necessarily in the first one. I feel like the central, if anything, like the action and the Miss Lennox, who ends up being the big villain, like that's maybe less important because I think it's more about, it's almost like the her plan and what's going on and the abductions and everything are kind of a canvas on which like some of this like human stuff can play out. That's my reading of it. I'm not saying yours is wrong. That's just how I see it.
No, it is. I mean, it is more secondary to the character drama of it, of Virgil and Eben, and how they're kind of the dark reflection of one another. Your classic hero villain thing. And that is the most interesting part of it, and I do think that was given some really good meat. Yeah, I don't know. The stuff with like the henchman guy was just kind of unnecessary, and then there was some other stuff. I don't know.
I am guessing. I am guessing only because I had to bite my tongue a couple of times because I was about to say things that are more from Shadow Cabinet than they are from this, and I haven't actually read the Icon versus Hardware that we'll do for our next episode yet. That was part of the bigger arching story and less the strictly static story.
Okay. That's, I mean, fair, but also, yeah, I mean, the drama of it is what, okay. This is a tangent, but like, what isn't at this point? You were talking a little bit earlier, someone was talking a little bit earlier about like, making up your own characters and like, oh, this guy's got the same powers and oh, I can't do that. And how it's not about the powers, it's about, creating an interesting character and what do they do to make them distinct in other ways. And so in my capacity at the school, I also run the tabletop, like the board games, card games, and RPGs club after school. And so I've been getting into a lot of different RPG, like tabletop RPGs, including one called Masks, which is it's an RPG where you're specifically playing like teenage superheroes, like you're the next generation of heroes, and it's explicitly based off of stuff like Teen Titans and Young Justice, and those series where where it's about the kids trying to prove themselves to the adult heroes. And in that game, there's no mention of like, oh, your power level is this, or like, oh, you have to, if you have lightning powers, you can attack at this range. Like you do have powers, but there's sort of, it's just kind of assumed that like, yeah, you have, teleportation powers or light or, mind reading powers or whatever, and you could use those. But what actually matters in terms of like the stats your character has is labels of like your self-image and how others perceive you. So the only numbers on your character sheet are for your 5 labels, which are danger, freak, mundane, savior, and it's called Masks. Danger, freak, mundane, savior, and superior. And so all the character archetypes fit in like different, like they see themselves as different variations on those numbers. And so there's like a character class who's like, the transformed, who's the kid who was experimented on, and now he's got kind of a monstrous form. So he's like, his freak stat starts out super high. And then you've got a character who's like the legacy, who's, like the new Captain Marvel or whatever. And so he's got like a savior stat that's really high. And so when you make moves, it's not about like, oh, what's my super strength class? It's more like, how do I see myself in this environment and what is my role? And sometimes it's about, what do I do that doesn't, how do I best not screw up in making people, not afraid of me, and how do I live up to the ideals that I've kind of set out for myself? This was a real big tangent, and it doesn't really have anything to do with the book we were talking about, but I find it fascinating. Yeah. And it's a cool way to think about it, because it's less about, are you the speedster? Are you the mind reader? Are you it's not that. Mm-hmm. It's like, what's your narrative role? Are you, the superpower? Are you the superpowered alien from space who kind of doesn't understand their powers? Are you the tortured one who's had some amnesia in his past? Or are you the sidekick to the really cool superhero who has to prove themselves? And that's a thing that I think a lot of comics really need to learn. Well, I don't even think that comics need to learn from this. It's sometimes comics readers, but being aware that it doesn't matter whether Superman could beat the Hulk. It matters is like, is it an interesting story where Superman fights the Hulk?
Right.
Yeah. The fight I always think of real quick is where like 2 characters that everyone wants to see fight is in the JLA Avengers book. They have Captain America fight Batman. Oh. I'm sure I've talked about this on the podcast before, but it's a thing where like they just kind of stare at each other and like each throw like 1 or 2 punches and just kind of watch each other. And then eventually Batman is just like, okay, you could probably beat me, but something else is going on here, right? And Captain America's like, yeah, let's find out what's going on. And that's it. Like there's no actual fight, because it's about characters sort of recognizing what they are to each other, which I thought was a really fun way of doing it. So anyway, the big tangent is to say that like I like static. It doesn't matter the power levels and the villains and the danger. It's, you know, what are the motivations? What are they fighting for? What's their reason for fighting and so forth? And that's stuff that like shonen manga has always understood pretty well, I think. Like,
right. Yeah. Yeah. And you know, it's funny because it's like, because I don't want to just dunk on Marvel and DC, because to be honest, like I've talked about how my reading is probably more like 75-25, maybe even 80-20, but like indie versus Marvel and DC. Hell, some of the Marvel and DC books that are still in my pull box, I forgot to stop. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like, you know what's interesting is like even reading these issues, because I like 3 of them I could find, like the middle 3, and then like so I ended up having to get digitals just to read everything. But the digitals read so smoothly. I might start just doing collections, because like when you read like DC or Marvel month to month, the ads are crazy, because they're for all these other like series they're trying to pitch that are just like, oh, it's like we know we already have like 4 books for this character, but you've never seen this team do it with this little twist, and it's like, all right, that's cool. And like, shout out to all these creators that get to play in the sandbox, but like, some of these same, how many and many of Tad's, amazing guests, right, are people who have had some, success playing with the big 2, but then they get to really let their imaginations fly when they, do their own books separately. So I think,
and for that matter, oftentimes it's their imaginations fly and they get on the big 2 radar. They get to go and have a steady paycheck for a while and hopefully build some name recognition, and then either get tired of it and leave, or build up enough name recognition that it's easy to leave, or become so big that they get paid enough that it's worth staying because they're having fun.
Right.
I'm almost positive I mentioned this on the last episode, but there was a tweet that I remember seeing years ago where it was someone being like, imagine there was a world where every single musician's dream was to be big enough and famous enough and sell enough records that they could finally one day join either a Beatles or a Rolling Stones cover band.
Right.
And like it sticks in my head, because like,
in hopes of then going and selling more albums on their own.
Yeah,
or barring that, having health care.
Yeah, God, oof, yeah. Boy, howdy.
Not to mention that the Beatles and the Rolling Stones were cover bands of black rock musicians. But that's another podcast.
True, fair. Yeah, that's
it's a good one.
But yeah, the way that comics work and the way that we think about like trying to do variations on existing stuff, and it's you've never seen Batman on a cooking show, and actually that's a bad example because I would kill to see Batman on a cooking. That would actually be great, but
well, I don't know what the overall plan with it is, but this is where I want to quickly give a plug, because there was released over Christmas on DC Unlimited a JLA like cooking book.
Oh,
that I think is become a thing. Andrew Iden wrote the first
Andrew Iden,
issue, and like Flash is making chocolate chip cookies. And it's fantastic. So it's possible. We also know that Superman apparently flies to Japan every day.
Yeah, the Superman
fast food.
That was great.
Which is a fantastic manga.
I haven't actually read that, but I know about it and I have to read it.
It's amazing.
Sounds fantastic. But it's also, amazing. I mean, I am joking, but it is fun to have these characters in situations that you're not otherwise seeing, and there's fun, variations on it. Well, and I still have saved that panel, that one-page thing they used to put in comics in like the 80s or 90s where it was Oliver Queen's, famous 3-alarm chili recipe. I still have that somewhere. It's not that spicy.
My favorite superhero comic from 2024 was when Batman and Superman, or not Batman, when Wonder Woman and Superman went shopping for Batman's birthday present.
And those kind of variations and those kinds of interesting.
Right.
Apparently, Tom King's daughter told him it would never work, and he took that as a challenge.
That's a good story.
But that's what
that was revealed on the 22 Panels podcast.
Yeah. Look, it's the reason why like the even like the Claremont X-Men books are just so they live in people's imaginations so
Oh
much
yeah.
because it just was weird. He got into like just these little nuances, even in like some of the big and I was just a little kid, I was just eating it up. Like, like when they were living in Australia, and
Oh
they had you
yeah.
jumping back and forth between all these, and then there's like the little romantic tension with like Madeline Pryor and Havoc and the layers to that because he's Scott's brother, and then and just even just and they would have like little asides like yeah like the whole way they met Jubilee was because who was it like Rogue, Psylocke, and Storm went shopping at the mall, and then
Yeah,
like
something like that.
yeah, like so they would just like always be these like
Yeah.
I don't know like you have to some of the most memorable stuff in the superhero vein is the stuff where they're like, who are these people? What are
Yeah.
they doing when in
Bruce Wayne
between
eating
like these
a hamburger
events?
with a fork and knife. That was
We
pretty
always have, I mean, the classic
memorable.
X-Men, the X-Men baseball or basketball games, like that
Yep.
stuff is
Yeah.
fantastic. That's always like a draw is seeing those issues. Yeah, I mean, this isn't to say that like we need to immediately abandon any issue where where a superhero fights another superhero, but because like that stuff is still good. But it is fun to see, oh yeah, these are characters who have,
And that stuff's so much easier to do in an ongoing
Right.
than it is when
in
you've
a
got
one-off book, yeah, or a
a page
miniseries.
limit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's, I mean, bringing us around full circle, that's the stuff I want to see with Dakota specifically, because Dakota is such a rich environment for storytelling. Not, I mean, not just because of the diversity, which is one thing, but also because this is established as a city that has its own unique brand of like superpowered teenagers, largely teenagers, who have their own
Mhm.
very specific like views on what they want to do and how they want to change the city, and people are dealing with it in different
Right.
ways. And there's community support, and that's such a different thing than like, even if you did a book about Gotham, it wouldn't look like that. And I want Dakota to be a really central character for whatever happens next, because I think that's the real value is seeing not just Static and Icon and Hardware, who are all cool characters, but like what's the city or what's the community? What are they building? What's
Yeah.
Virgil's
I
dad doing? What's
wonder, yeah. To
but
that point, I wonder what the because I know like with the original Milestone universe, there was like a Dakota Bible, and like and I a Milestone Bible, and like I still want to see it. I mean,
okay.
you've seen them reprint pages and stuff from it, but like it was
Hmm.
very thought out. Just about like maybe where things are, the interplay, different neighborhoods and stuff like that. And I don't know, maybe that is a part of the current plan, but I actually don't. I feel like we haven't had as much back matter. Now granted, I have in my to read pile. I think I have some of the like special issues that were released. So I don't know if any
Hmm.
of those kind of get into like just what the brain trust or whatever, like what I mean, like the planning of this Dakota and the mapping out is. But I
Yeah.
don't know. It feels like maybe I don't. And when I say like I'd like to see DC like invest, I think that's what I'm talking about because and this is just Marcus speaking on behalf of Black people. I
The opinions
there's a
expressed here are
way
his own.
Wait a
there's a
minute.
way.
You know them
No, no,
all?
no, no. Come on, that's a hack joke. You're about to make a hack joke. I'm sorry. If a black person is allowed to mention being black without somebody being like, "Wait, you're black?" All right, no, but in all seriousness,
No, you
what I was
said
about
on
to say,
behalf,
Oh
so I
God.
had to.
right. No, but let me talk, man. You would see, stop
Okay.
silencing black people, Tad. All right, Plymouth Rock landed on us. Now, what I'm trying to tell you is that now I lost my train of thought. What I actually was trying. Oh, just about investing, right? And it goes beyond DC, it goes beyond Marvel, it goes beyond comics. Like in 2020, George Floyd was murdered at the hands of the police, in the way that so many black people have been before him, right? It just happened to be caught on video. It happened to be caught on video at a time when the world was standing still from COVID. It happened to be way more slow and cruel than a shooting. You know what I mean? Like, so all of these recipes, it took hold, and people outside of black people noticed in a way and on a level that had not happened before. A lot of the reaction was kind of a bunch of nonsense in the form of like corporations being like, hey, we got to make some symbolic gestures that we are going to surely rescind a couple years later. And I'm not even talking about the nonsense that we're living through this week with
God.
trying to like literally get in a time machine. But what I'm talking about is the way that like there was a lot of like symbolic things and that weren't getting at the heart of the issues that were being raised, right? So I have my own kind of side eye that myself and other friends of mine, have for different organizations locally and nationally that have like, made these pledges about getting it and about Black lives and Black voices, et cetera, right? But like to me, you need to invest, and not just Black people. I'm talking about marginalized groups, period, right? Because then come June, it's like everybody's super pride supportive, right? But it's not just on a given month, it's not just after a given tragedy. If we acknowledge, right, that's all these groups of people that are underrepresented have valuable stories to tell, but that like the traditional mechanisms for those stories to get out there have not served them or not taken into account bias and all the other structural stuff that's gotten in the way, then it's like, it's the equity versus the equality discussion. Equality just is like, hey, there's no rule saying Black people or queer people or queer Black people can't make books. So it's all equal. But if your editors are only hiring a bunch of their buddies and their buddies are kind of monochromatic dudes, then you kind of get an industry that's run by a bunch of monochromatic dudes. So my thing is, in order to get true equity, because equity goes beyond just saying like, hey, anybody can do this. Equity is recognizing where you have just blind spots and where you're missing things and where people are falling through the cracks or stories are falling through the cracks. So I guess that's what I want to see when I'm saying invest in these stories, and yes, if you're these companies and you're like, this book has to hit this 10,000 copies threshold or whatever, or we're going to kill it. If you have like a David Walker's Nighthawk or something that's really critically acclaimed and is picking up steam with fans, even though it's not hitting that number, maybe don't kill it, or maybe just release it digital until its sales start to, catch up to the threshold that you want to see. So I guess that's what I'm saying. It's like, and I would love to see, because I feel like some of the building of Dakota that you want to see could happen if they invested. And I just feel like I don't know. I'm not checking their pockets. I don't know where the money is and is not being spent at DC. It just doesn't. It feels like Milestone is still going, and I feel like it's been a couple years, so I'm glad to see that it's not, it hasn't gone away. But I don't know. I'm already a little suspicious of these big companies because a lot of promises have been made and not kept, and then when people aren't looking, the promises pulled off the table. You know what I mean? So there's that part of me that's a little circumspect, but I will I will get off my pulpit now.
No, it's a good pulpit. It's another place where I think the greater publishing industry is doing a better job than Marvel and DC. And I agree with you. As many stories and whatnot as I still read from white guys with similar backgrounds as me. I tend to get excited by stories from literally anybody else's point of view, just because it's different. It requires me to think differently. Um, like the devil's advocate question is throwing out sales and profits and whatnot. Because I do think overall what we're talking about is a corporate courage issue. I think that they could make money off of it, whether if they wanted to, except that Disney and Warner Brothers are big enough that they'd also be lightning rods. They wouldn't have to do much for it to suddenly become a really big issue. And my question, I guess, is that a good or a bad thing
Can I
for it
ask
to
you? I
become
think I know
that?
what you're asking. Yeah, I think I know what you're asking, but just to be clear, do you mean to become a big issue like intolerant backlash, or what do you
Definitely
mean?
intolerant backlash, but like Disney came out against the don't say gay law in Florida and immediately had their tax laws changed.
And
Only
they fought
now
back,
they're
but then
looking at a Republican Congress and reactionary lunatic president.
yeah, and they're
I mean,
already
so it
doing things
becomes
like
a
pulling their
big issue
yeah.
on massive levels that involve people's jobs, that involve possibly people's livelihoods. I'm not I'm not saying it's not a courage, but I guess what I'm wondering is overall, are they the people we want fighting that battle?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's
Well,
you
to
see
be
the results
clear,
of them
yeah,
trying to fight
yeah.
that
Go ahead.
battle
No,
is
no, you go
then
ahead. Yeah.
they have fought a lot of those battles, and then just recently they decided to, for instance, pull that episode of Moon Girl Devil Dinosaur that had trans representation. They pulled another episode of, I think it was an Inside Out spinoff or something else. There was another
Mm.
series that had a trans character that, you know, the entire scene was cut and so forth. And so you're starting to see companies who, even if they are the 800-pounder gorillas in the room, they're getting skittish enough that they're no longer making that a cornerstone. When in fact they are the ones who are powerful enough to do it and confirm, hey, these stories deserve to be told. These stories deserve to be deserve to be to have to be
I mean,
invested in.
honestly, I think they always decided on a profit basis.
Oh, oh
Before
no,
there are enough people that
absolutely.
want those
100%.
stories, and there's still enough people that want those stories that in a normal existence it would be
Yeah,
profitable. Except
yeah,
that
I was gonna make
now
a. Oh, go
it's
ahead.
not just
Sorry.
about selling more copies, it's about not having to pay legal fees. It's about not having things seized or burned or and
yeah,
So you know
again,
what?
from a
Yeah.
courage standpoint, I want him to stand up. But
yeah.
Well, you know what, and you're all right. You're making so I always I always tend stuff when I hear devil's advocate, but you act that's an interesting question. And what I will say is this: what I will say is this that like I was gonna make a joke that I had some brilliant Machiavellian scheme to get you guys to talk about how bad capitalism is, but it wasn't a scheme that I had. But you just did break down like the problem, right? Like
Mm.
and
well, if
this
only what we
adherence.
practiced in the United States was capitalism, it might be better, but it's not.
Oof.
It's no
Oh
Sure,
longer.
boy.
and that's we can definitely get into. We can definitely, obviously, yes, we can definitely get into that. But capitalism in the form that we are practicing it, right? Like what we are calling capitalism and what is taking place right now, right? And so yeah, it is the age old, uh, you know, brawl of or battle of just or tension between art being paired with money, and this system that we have, and it does it is such a hindrance, and it does get in the way.
Well,
um
but I mean, I'll
yeah,
actually
go ahead.
take it a step further because what was actually going through my head was an episode of The West Wing where um, Jed's going to some Hollywood fundraiser at the same time where there's some saber rattling among Republicans about a marriage act that makes it so gay people can't get married, that he knows that there's not the votes for. He knows that if it does get past the House, it won't get past the Senate. He knows that if it does get past the Senate, he's going to veto it. And the Hollywood exec that's running this fundraiser said, "Get on TV and say that then." And he's like, "Don't you get it? Right now, like only a handful of people even know that this is something that's going to the House floor, and it's not going to pass, and then it's going to go away. But the second I say something, they'll start fundraising off of it. They'll start. It becomes I'm a lightning rod. The second I say something, it becomes not an issue. It becomes the issue, and they will put all of their resources into it and all of their attention onto it. And the people that care about it all are now going to care about it a ton. So I guess that's kind of my question is
So yeah.
in this environment,
All right. So I have a new answer because I really had time
Yeah.
to think about what you said. All right, like spoiler alert for anybody listening to this in the future. This is the week that the despot was inaugurated, and it feels like it was a scheme, but it was coincidence because the inauguration day traditionally falls on either the 20th or the 21st, and obviously the MLK Day, is always the first Monday after his birthday on the 15th, or just in general the third Monday, right? So they happen to coincide this year in what I have termed as just a real, just revelatory representation of two opposing truths of America, right? And
Right.
like part of, for my family, myself, how I got through Monday was like, we took part in a Dr. King celebration. I'm going somewhere with this. And, I was asked to write something for it, and I spoke. And a big part of what I wrote about was just kind of this moment we're facing, and like, and I mean we, as in like everybody who has a soul in this country, regardless of your identity, right? Or everybody who has empathy inside of them, what we are all facing if you're an empathetic human being. And juxtaposing that with like Dr. King in the situation, and I really, I listened to some speeches I read, obviously, like, just kind of have absorbed a lot through my lifetime. But I really thought about like Dr. King's place in the 60s, and like just the incredible courage, because I mean, like, the death threats just were never ending, the violence, and to be clear, like, before the fatal shot, like there was a lot of actual violence that he took, so where I'm going with this is the fact that like he didn't wait. There was people telling him all the time, like, you gotta wait. There was like, when he was in a Birmingham jail, he wrote about like the white moderate and how everybody was telling him like, oh, I got you, I get it, you gotta do this. Everything you're asking for is totally reasonable, but the country's not ready, and blah blah blah. Like, and he did not wait. And to be quite honest, like, I think about the fact that, my parents, who are still alive, like, came to this country like 5 years after the Voting Rights Act, and you know, and so it's like you have, it's not old, and like, if, to be honest, if Dr. King listened to a lot of the people that are talking to him about the like, what are we gonna do, or how are we gonna face this, Lyndon B. Johnson, huge racist, but also because Dr. King pushed and pushed, we got civil rights legislation that these maniacs are trying to dismantle right now. That's neither here nor there. We will deal with that in time because we have the example of the people who dealt with it back then. But I guess my point is that, you know, yeah, there's the devil's advocate questions, and there's all the stuff about the mechanisms and how they work, but like, I, we're in a better place than we could have been as a society because a lot of people said, "F that, I'm still gonna do what I'm gonna do." You know what I mean? And so I know that the superhero comics are far less consequential than civil rights. Um, but I do think that, courage is the optimal word, and I'll leave
And
it at that.
and it's also, I mean, every one of us can have a part to play. Not every one of us is going to be Martin Luther King, but any one
Right.
of us can find ways to help and to be it in small ways to be okay. So I to talk about my own experiences, I actually had a thing just recently. I mentioned I work in a middle school library. I had a student who was coming in every morning, very sweet kid, one of the few who actually used like the library catalog to put books on hold, which thank you. And I was noticing like the books they were checking out, every single one of them was like queer history and specifically like trans narratives, biographies, books about, transgender people in America, that kind of thing. I didn't say anything. I'm a librarian. I have a sacred oath not to, whatever you check out is between you, me, and the wall. But then later on, I was talking with one of the counselors, and the counselor said to me, "Hey, you have any books on like trans history or like trans people or so forth. And I'm like, yeah, let me ask you real quick, is this for a specific student? And can I guess who it is? And then he said, yeah. And it's like, yeah, that's the student. And making that connection then made it, I was able to talk with the counselors and they passed it along to that student. Hey, Mr. Ted in the library is, we'll talk to you about this. We'll recommend some books. You can let him know anything. It is a safe space. He will be able to help you with whatever kind of books you're looking for. If you want to try out different pronouns or a different name, that is something he will help you with. And realizing that that's a thing I can do, as small and pitiful as it seems in some ways, like that
it's
was
not though.
It's not. I mean, it's not. It's really not, because for that kid, it's the most important, potentially the most important thing of their school time. Because like it's huge to know that they have an ally that they can talk to about this stuff who isn't gonna report it to their parents. Actually, the parents are supportive too, but it's also just like there's other kids, obviously. But it's me realizing, even though I just think of myself as the guy behind, I don't just think of myself as the guy behind the counter checking out books, but even as I sometimes feel a little bit useless in my role at the school, like those moments where I realize, oh, I can do something. There's things I can do. I can collect books by queer and BIPOC authors. I can make sure that we have a collection that reflects students' interests. I can make sure that I put out displays that emphasize this, that, and the other. I've got Black History Month coming up. I'm going to be putting a huge display of that. Like all those elements are small things and small ways that I can build up and help and make the world better. And that's, that made me feel a little bit better about the time.
That was really because I'm not. I don't think that Ted and I or you should not be doing everything we can right now. It shouldn't. My question was more about in this moment in time. Do we want DC and Marvel being the ones that are guiding the fight?
Yeah, no, and that's why it is. Yeah, and that's why. Well, look, I just got done telling you that the ratio of my mainstream versus indie reading, when I even have time to read. So I'm never looking. I mean, to be honest, while there's great stuff from both companies, like, they are the McDonald's and Burger King and McDonald's and Wendy's of comics. Like, you know what I mean? Like they have some good stuff, although maybe it's not the best analogy, but no, not necessarily. But I do think that as a reader, at my specific intersection, I definitely believe in just speaking truth to power about these things. You know what I mean? Because there's enough people complaining like, oh my God, like Ariel's black and about like this nonsense. That like they get to complain about all that, and I'm being constructive. Not that Marvel or DC is hearing me, despite the fact that they're listening to our podcast right now. Well, but they're here for you, Ted.
No, and understand they are, but understand I only also meant it as a question. I do not have a strong position.
If I have an issue with what you say, I will say it. So I'm not like, oh, Tad is like trying to like be slick or something.
I was only thinking about the complexity of it because that's the way my brain works. And because we've got 4 years of resistance in front of us and I don't even know how to start.
Marathon, not a sprint.
But seriously though, like creative people, like like this is like I'm not the first one to say this, but it's time for us to get busy and people in general, we all need to build coalition. We talked about empathy. Ted just gave a perfect example of how far empathy can go. Like, you know what I mean? And also librarians are super important, so don't undersell that. But so I just think we all have our parts to play. It actually was one of the main themes of my speech too. Was like kind of juxtaposing how many different roles, because back in the day it wasn't just Dr. King, right? It was like there was the people who drove. There was security, armed security that helped to make sure that Martin Luther King Jr. and other people could be nonviolent. That gave them the option to be nonviolent. So there was like so many roles, and like just like right now in this moment, there's so many roles. And so I think we're all going to figure it out literally day to day. But like it's gonna come down to like in our communities, like is there somebody we can help us being even more directly affected by just this nonsense, this regressive nonsense than we are, and are we even in a small way in a position to help them? So, I mean, that's what it comes down to me. But I do think that like creatives have a role to play as they always have, not just comic book creatives, but just creative people
what
in
I
general.
will toss out as well, and I don't have a good enough wide angle lens of the big two, because like you, I read way more outside of Marvel DC than I read inside of Marvel DC. Today happened to be one of those weird days where the first three comics that I read were Marvel or DC comics, because they were also among my favorite comics and all written by friends of mine. And the first one had a horrible, horrible character that had seemingly been brought down in previous issues. Managed to you didn't see how he climbed his way back up, but the very last image in the book is him going, well, this is my safe place and where I'll put it. And it zooms out. He's in the White House. The second one made a not so veiled allusion to a Chicago Police Department black site that is somehow still in existence, even though the reporting on it has been phenomenal. But where officers tend to take people, mostly black and brown, mostly drug users, not violent criminals, on their way to the police station so that they can talk to them before they're actually logged into any books or anything. And certainly before they have any access to attorneys, and try to turn them into informants, using not nice means. And then the third one had a character reflecting on his own culpability in a company that had wound up poisoning an entire low-income community that they had only that only existed because they'd had to cover up some other atrocity, and they'd done so by donating their toxic waste site for low-income housing. So there we just have three examples at the big two.
Social awareness.
Where some of this stuff's being dealt with.
Yeah.
And I hope we see more of it.
I mean, yeah, and I want to be clear because I feel like there's
Lord knows, and also, can I give the shout out? Eve Ewing's writing an X-Men book, so.
Ooh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That is
one amazing black woman.
Exceptional X-Men, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I've really been enjoying that. Yeah, and like to be clear, like I don't want to come off because Lord knows, as much as I'm not crazy about the angry fanboys, angry bigoted fanboys. I also, I don't want to be the indie comics snob either. And you bring up a good point, right? Like, because I still read this stuff, and there's still stuff I read that's great, and I'm enjoying the 3 X-Men books right now, and I mean I know there's way more because they print so many, but the 3 main ones, and so there is good stuff, and I think the things that I do like about these current X-Men books are things that go beyond the punching, and you know what I mean, and think about these characters, who they are to each other, where they're at right now, and so it's interesting. There's always stories to be told. There's interesting stories to be told. I don't think it's wrong for fans to ask for more, especially in constructive ways.
Oh no,
and not just like, how come everybody doesn't look like Han Solo, But
we never expect the big companies to be the standard bearers of culture. I mean, to be the standard bearers for like, progressive, forward-thinking things. It is awfully nice when that does happen. But yeah, it is often just not. That's.
But
not
I think historically they're often best the standard bearers for.
Oh, they are. I mean, it is fantastic when
when they're not acting like that's the role they're taking.
Yeah, that's a
or when they're not paying enough attention to get into the people's way. That's
my
what
point.
It really comes down to.
When the creators are doing it, and editorial might know what's going on, but the money hasn't figured out. Oh,
Hey, wait a minute. This guy's saying some awfully, revolutionary stuff here.
I feel like, you know what, man, this is just, I know we are at our time limit, so I'll save some of the other thoughts, because I do like that this evolved into just a kind of comics industry conversation, because I feel like there's a lot of stuff, but I'll save it for next time.
I'm hoping to one of these days manage to throw together an interesting panel to have just a conversation about the comics industry, the nature of art as part of capitalism, or really art in any society without a real safety net.
Yeah, I can speak about art from a few angles, so not just
comics,
but yeah.
I mean, this is frankly the single biggest reason that I wish we had a universal basic income. Doesn't even have to be a great.
I talk about that weekly,
income,
but go ahead.
It is art.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I seriously talk about that weekly. Yeah.
So that people didn't have to choose to be truly starving artists,
right?
To just devote their life to art.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
hoping for it. I got fingers crossed.
Yeah, I'm gonna wrap up actually with and I might have mentioned it before. I was at a talk Kate Beaton gave at CXC this year, and one of the things she pointed out with that, and it crosses for I mean, obviously she's not a creator of color, but what she is both a woman and a woman from a very working class poor background. Is that one of the problems with art in general, and she wasn't even just talking comics, is the people who can afford to make it, and not just afford to make it as in paying for the movie or whatnot, but afford to take the time to write a screenplay in hopes that they can sell it, or go to acting camp during the summer or whatnot, tend to be from one class of people. So we wind up with one viewpoint.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's perfect. I'm going to be super brief because I know we got to go, but that is a perfect illustration of a wall that, yes, basically non-middle to upper class white men, run into, because it's like you just have. Sometimes I marvel at how many mistakes white people get to make and still land on their feet. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like it's and don't get me wrong. I know there's a million people saying I'm white and I'm struggling, I'm white and I'm poor. Yes, I see you. I know it, and the poverty needs to be eradicated, period. Two, for everybody. That being said, there's just more margin for error writ large. You know what I mean? And that's all I'll say. So it's kind of like, and being creative is all about taking chances and leaps of faith. And like, from certain background, like, look, I'm a Black Caribbean immigrant, came here at a young age from a classic hardworking immigrant family. I should not be working in the comic books field. It took a lot of just, you know what I mean? Like, this is just what I was drawn to do, you know what I mean? To my parents' chagrin, but they're pretty happy now. So anyway, I'm not going to make the conversation longer, but a lot of good points.
Yeah, this was good, but yeah, I'm about to turn into a pumpkin.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Ted, I think, is officially turning into a pumpkin. So I'll say, for the Brothers Anderson, not related, this has been the Milestone Book Club on 22 Panels, and we will see you after the next page.
Hey guys, this is Tyler from 22 Panels. I'm here to tell you all about our Patreon. If you enjoy this show, please consider donating to our Patreon to keep this show going. We have many different tiers, all different levels, to help you decide what's right for you. Okay, so get on out there to patreon.com/22panelspodcast.